Okay, now so far I've encouraged you to create your own characters. And in our world, we've created one character, we created an atom. What I'm going to suggest now is how do we make things move? All right, so what we're going to do now is program movement. So movement has to be done in the agent character. All right, so I'm going to go over to the agent characters. I'm going to click over here, and I'm going to say, okay, how do I want my agent to move? Well, let's take a look. What are movements? Well, you'll notice that you've got all of these guys. I obviously want them to move forward, but there's a little tabby here thing. There's a little Lego thing here that needs to be present in order for my atoms to move. So what am I going to do with my atoms? Okay, well, what I think perhaps I want to do is I need to give them another interface button. And that is where this forever button comes in. When forever is toggled, I want my guy to move forward, and you can say any number of steps you want. Well, let's sit one step and see what happens. Okay, so run code, setup. You notice it creates new things, multicolored like we did before, but they're not really doing anything. Hit forever, and they're all moving. Wow, that's kind of cool. I also want you to know that there's a little control valve here. There's a little slider down here in the corner that if you hit the slider and move it up, you can slow them down or you can speed them up. Also, I want you to notice what happens when they hit the walls. When they hit the walls, they bounce off, and it is a physics in here is in fact accurate. They hit the wall and then they bounce off. All right, so that's one thing that's kind of cool. All right, so we've created normal movement. All right, and these guys are just bouncing off of the walls. All right, so that's actually kind of cool. Now, the question is like, okay, this is good for these guys. Okay, these guys are supposed to be atoms. But what if we wanted these guys to do something else? What if we wanted them to move randomly? All right, well, that would be something that you have to do with actually, that is something you do with agents, movement. All right, you probably want to mess around with this. All right, so let's see if we can mess around with random. Let's say I want them to go randomly. So that's a math problem. I want to go a random 90 degrees. So that means it's going to be they're going to turn left either 90 degrees or some random number between 0 and 90 degrees. So let's just put that there. And what you should experiment, what happens if I put this tag before the forward button? Let's see what happens if I put it after the forward button. Does it make a difference? Is a good question. So it hits run code, setup, whoops, forever. Run code, setup, forever. And you should notice what happens when you do that. Now there's a problem. They are moving more or less in circles, which makes sense if you think about it, because even if they move only 1 degree randomly to the right and the next degree 45 degrees, eventually they're going to wind up just going in a big circle. So I need to counterbalance that. All right, so the way I'm going to counterbalance this, let's try, what if we turn right movement by a random number? And I'm going to just copy this one thing. I'm going to turn right, copy, paste, and let's just try to turn right by a random 90 degrees and see what happens. Hit the forever button to stop it. Run code, setup, forever. Now if you think about that, that kind of makes sense. If you hit a random 0 to the left and then a random 0 to the right, 90 degrees to the right, you're going to turn right 90 degrees. But if you go randomly, you happen to hit left 90 degrees, so it winds, and right 0, then you go all the way to the right 90 degrees. You're going to have to play with this to see if you can figure it out. I did a very poor job of explaining it. But anyway, we now have these guys more or less wandering around randomly. All right, and again, they're still wandering around on the plane. So that's actually kind of cool. So now we've got these guys wandering around randomly. We'll call them zombies if you want. All right, or they're atoms, or they're bacteria, or whatever you want these creatures to be. That's how you program random movement. Okay, at this point, what I would like you to do is what you've got here, I'm going to want you guys to upload this. Okay, so you're going to upload. Now what you've done, you've created randomly colored objects, and you have them moving around randomly, and that's kind of cool. All right, you are going to use your own names here. All right, so let's hit remix, and I'm going to call this Chemistry Class Simulation 3, and what I'm going to be doing is uploading Chemistry Class Simulation 2. Okay, so we program random movement, we create a character. What's the next thing we're going to do? Next thing we're going to do is we're going to create an agent we control. All right, and we're going to figure out what that is in just a minute. Okay, so all right, so that's it for this tutorial. Next agent we're going to do is we're going to create agent we control.